Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to The Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am Captain Frodo, and I will be your gracious host and guide along the way. And as of speaking, it is only a matter of days since I got back from the wonderful Illusions magic conference in Horsens, Denmark, where I had the privilege and the pleasure of being invited by Sten Pagani, who runs Pagani Magic Store, pagani.dk, where I buy most of my magic equipment these days for when I'm doing shows. Anyway, this hasn't been sponsored by him, but maybe it should. But anyway, I had such an excellent time. Not only was it some great shows and some great lectures, there was also it was such a great hang. I had the best time hanging out with meeting some brilliant new friends. Morten, a Danish magician, who actually another fellow friendly magician here, Ray Speedy, he had put me onto this man's fantastic comedy magic, and he does a lot of freak show stuff as well, Morten with 2 N's. I had such an incredible journey of discovering this man, and then within a couple of days I realized, oh, this man is on the program of the same festival that I am working soon, so that was exciting. And he won the first place in the FISM Magic Championship, which is like the World Championships of Magic, which was in Montreal, Quebec, in earlier in the year, and he won first place there, which is kind of a big deal because the point system there is just because you win doesn't mean that you get first place. You need to score above a certain amount of points, 80 points or whatever that is, and he did. And so for last few times, as far as I can remember, maybe the first one wasn't actually handed out before. So that was great meeting him. Such an incredible guy to hang out with. We went over to his house together with Nick DeFat, which was another incredible cool dude that I got to hang out with. Very funny magician, and we had the best of times together with Charlie Caper, my longtime friend, magician and robot builder. I had a pleasure there at this festival also to see Mario, the maker magician, who also makes robots. So it's this bizarre coincidence where you kind of have the first and only 2 magicians in the world who is doing robot stuff, and they're at the same little convention in this gorgeous little town in Horsens in Denmark, where I've spent a bit of time, because that's also where Circus Nemo, this Danish crazy circus that I've worked for 3 times, they set up their season there, so you sort of do an extra week. So I've been there 2 weeks, 3 times. So anyway, I had just the best of times, got to see lectures, and big for me was that I got to do a lecture for the magicians. So there's about, I don't know how many people there are, 100, 150, 20, 30 magicians. And I got to hold my lecture, and that was very excellent. It was very well received. People really enjoyed it, came up afterwards and said it was great, and it was my very first lecture. And it's always hard to know, of course, like how useful is what I talk about when I talk about it, for instance, specifically for magicians or whatever. And as it turned out, it was very useful and fruitful for conversations, both after and also before. So that was very good. The lecture was called Magic and Showmanship, and perhaps in some slightly revised form, without me revealing any magic tricks or anything like that. I might share it here on the podcast at a later stage. But anyway, I had the best of times, and Nick and Morten and Charlie, we just ripped it up there. Also got to see Charlie and Marlin's show Minor Miracles, which was just such a wonderful experience to see. I've absolutely, if you're at a fringe festival somewhere around the world and you have the opportunity to see Minor Miracles with Charlie and Marlin, then definitely take the chance. And Mario, the maker magician, he lives in New York City, so if you're around there, watch this guy blow the minds and inspire the pants off any kid. It was like this guy's heart is so big that you can't help but get emotionally affected. Anyway, so today I have a kind of shorter episode, and it is a topic that I talked about, I don't know if it was in episode 20 or something in the first season, but it's been on my mind a little bit as I like the image of the showman who has two homes. And on top of that, I also brought it up unscripted in my lecture. So I thought I would bring it back up here. And since we are now in the part of the way, the laying out and explaining of the way of the showman, which we're coming to the final sort of 4 or 5 episodes here now as we are now hitting episode 33 of the way. I thought this could be good for the completion of it all to go through a little revised thinking on the showman's two homes. Yeah, well, this is normally where I say the title of the thing, but since I just said the showman's two homes, it feels almost a little weird to repeat it now, but a showman's two homes, that is what we are about to dive into, because the showman lives two lives. And this goes right back to in the very beginning here, where we were talking about an inside and an outside of the showman, how there's the outside world, the outside geography, and the inner geography, and how we divided that word showman up in the show world and in the man or human being. So this is the first, is like the showman lives two lives as a human being, like the man as a human being, and as a showman engaged in the business of making and doing shows. And both are, in a sense, creative, but their motivations and domains are of totally different natures. In the showman's human or man aspect, and just dividing this word up, keep feeling a little awkward about this man all the time, but that's how I have done it. So anyway, so in the human man aspect of his life, the showman eats and sleeps and goes to meetings, has relationships, maybe he has children, maybe he has extended family, maybe he provides for those he loves, and he does everyday things, while simultaneously, in a parallel way, he spends a lot of time in another particular and ephemeral dimension of the world, which we call shows. This is, of course, the section where we are now talking about, and we have the triangle of showman, audience, and show, and this is all brought together with attention, and we've spoken about showman, we've spoken about audiences, we've spoken about attention, and we are now in shows, and this is a aspect of shows that I think is really quite interesting, because this show realm, this ephemeral dimension, it is the realm where juggling and poetry and magic and stories and music and religion and that this is where this grows, and this is where it is actualized into the real world. This is the world that we get together and we experience as we sit around a fire, or as we sit facing the one who faces the other way. And in this realm, the showman prepares what skills and what words, what ideas and situations can be presented to bring forth the participatory creation between him and his audience, which is what we call shows. So we're kind of preparing to get into that world with all our rehearsals and all this creation that we do. We're creating to invite the audience into this world, this participatory world where we're both, connecting over a story or over magic. So the things that the showman does in the real world is closely interrelated to what happens in the shows, yet they are different. And this place, if we can call it that, the show has a pull on him, and he wants to be there. For some, it is experienced as a need. Without getting to this place, there is a lack of meaning in the showman's life. And since what so much of the rest of his time and attention is focused on only fully comes alive in the show, then if he can't show his work, his existence loses its axis of meaning. And in a certain sense, like any division of a whole, this separation of showman into domains or domiciles, 2 different domains. It is of course artificial, as any other mapping we have done along the way, but yet again, from the division and simplification, meaningful patterns emerge, graspable patterns which, through the process of making sense to us, makes us understand something which until then had been sort of below our radar or lost in the noise. Because in the moment we understand something, in the moment that we see something for what it is, then a pattern in the swirling expression of life or patterns emerge, and meaning emerge in the moment that we understand something, because understanding and meaning are, as I think we might have talked about before, they're sort of 2 sides of the same coin. If we don't understand something, then it is meaningless. And in the moment we start to understand it, that we start to connect to it, maybe you start connecting to it intellectually, go, oh, I understand why this painting is like this. In the process of you understanding that, it's like you pick at a little thread, and then all sorts of little ends and things will be able to connect yourself to it, and then meaning will come from it. And then the more you think about it, hopefully, and the more time you spend with it, the more meaningful this painting might be. So understanding and meaning are really closely connected. Now, the showman, living his life in these 2 interconnected yet separate worlds, means that the showman then has 2 homes. One is in the real world, often a house, a flat, a yurt, or a caravan towed behind this red Volvo, a place he feels like he belongs, where he can put his things. And in this home there is often other people whom he cares a lot about. Let's add to this that there is a significant amount of performers that might not have a fixed abode, not even a caravan. They might use a friend's address or a parent's address as a place to receive mail and whatever else a fixed abode is needed for. Regardless of this, these kinds of real-world homes are found in specific locations of outer geography, like London, Las Vegas, or Haugesund, Norway. The showman's other home turns out to be much more elusive. After our early explorations of outer and inner geographies in our very early chapters, one might assume that if the first home is in the outer geography, the second home is to be found in the showman's inner geography. But this isn't really the case. It's more complicated than that. So the desire or need for this second home can be found in our inner geography, in the showman's inner geography, but the actual manifestation of this home, the actual emergence of this phenomena, is not a mere inner imaginative creation for one human being, showman or audience. Because a show is not just something that happens in the mind of the showman. It is not the same as a dream, and it is not a figment of imagination. From the outside, the constant touring of a showman might look like aimless and restless wanderings from gig to gig around the world, and it might seem like he is rootless and lost. Yet the truth, I think, is quite different. So when a showman travels from country to country and state to state, from one continent to the next, I think that in a very real sense he is on his way home. He is on his way home to this other home in the dimension of shows. A showman's other home is the show, a place in the world between, in between him and his audience, in between him and the world, in a sense, an emergent dimension between him and his audience, brought into being as he is exercising his craft. This is then, it becomes a manifestation of this ephemeral second home on which so much of the showman's life turns. So the nature of this second home is that the showman can only get to it when he stands before an audience. He can get close when he internalizes the audience and explores the techniques and tricks and the words and concepts he wishes to shape into material for presentation. But creation and rehearsal gets him tantalizingly close, but he only truly gets home when engaged in the full process of showmanship, which necessitates an audience. So in this way we could say that what the showman does when he performs is to welcome his audience into his other home. All his creations, his acts, his skills, his many tricks and jokes, his manuscripts and writings, his great many dreams and hopes that are manifested on the stage as he performs are all physical manifestations that will allow his audience to step inside his home, his other home. It's an odd home, since he can only enter when he brings guests. The audience now is in this peculiar role. It's like a dual role that they are both house key and house guests. Only by sharing his home can he get home. If he comes home alone, it is locked for him and for all. He has to sleep on the veranda or something outside, maybe in the shed. The rehearsal shed. He can't get into the main mansion that springs into being when he invites the audience in there. So in a sense, without them, it's sort of like this dream that he can't access. And with them, he can be lucidly dreaming and get inside, and it all comes into being as the audience starts looking at him, and tension builds. So to speak mythopoetically, as in myth-creatingly, mythopoetically, this home is the most beautiful castle, lying beyond the wild blue yonder, the palace where poetry resides, where dreams are made and live their effervescent lives, where all fictional characters live, where the worlds created in the Norse, Greek and African mythologies are found, where fairy tales, myths and tall tales come from. It's the place of deep and living imagination made real by human connection. This most beautiful castle in the wild blue yonder is a place of tremendous excitement. Coming home to it is a source of great pleasure and belonging for Showman and his house key guests alike. It is a glorious and shiny place where things seems at once more real and more fantastic. It's a place that is willed and imagined into existence. The showman gets himself, and in the mirroring to the spectators, they meet an enriched version of themselves, where the limitations and restrictions of everyday life doesn't need to apply. Characters larger than life, heroes, villains, tricksters, shamans, sorcerers, saints, and even gods inhabit the many rooms and chambers and gardens of this sacred place. The part of the showman's self, the character which stands on the stage, the one who brings the audience into this castle, is the manifestation of the show aspect of the showman. It's who the showman is when he gets to go home to his second most beautiful castle in the wild blue yonder. This character is born, and it grows and develops and lives in this dimension. Like how the showman struggles and desires to be a good man in a real everyday world, meeting the demands and the needs of loving and living in the world, he must also work to better and improve his other character, the other manifestation of his self. He wants his character to be the best companion for his house key guests, meaning his audience, for he is aware that unless they want to join him in his home, the most beautiful castle, then he can't get in. He can invite them to the front of his house. He can trick them with colorful posters and great promises. School buses full of children might be shoved into seats before him, but unless they want to play his strange games, unless they want to participate, his home will not open to him. We've all had performances where we've shown all our material, yet nothing happens. You might as well have been reading aloud from a manual of instructions for a 1984 dishwasher for all the affect that your performance had. In moments like this, we go home to our outer geography home, dejected. We got them to the threshold, but they did not want to come in. They did not want to visit, thus leaving us standing on the verge of getting to our most favorite realm, only not to manage to grasp their attention, and thus leaving us locked out of our most precious place. The showman is grateful, or he should be, for the dimensions of shows. The castle in the wild blue yonder can only be entered voluntarily. You can be present in a theatre for 2 hours of chronological time, but you might never transcend this quantitative time and experience kairos. There is nothing the showman can do to force the unwilling. No matter how much him and the teachers present at the school show scream and reprimand the kids, they will neither enter the castle nor let him enter his glorious home in the wild blue yonder. It makes him want to be a better person, a better character. Some showfolk probably spends considerably more time working on and improving their character, the character that they are in the shows, this which lives in the castle and the wild blue yonder, rather than the character that they play in the world. This second home, I'm not saying I approve of that, but I think it is the case. We should all work at least as much, if not more, on the character that we play in the real world, the character that we are in the real world. Now this second home is, needless to say, a place the showman wants to be. Maybe he more than wants it. Maybe he needs it in the way that a smoker needs a cigarette, or any animal needs food and water. Those in the business who were doing high numbers of shows on a regular basis when the pandemic came, we had a very hard time with this abrupt loss of access to our shows. As the COVID-19 pandemic hit and theaters closed, and as concerts were shut down, as street shows became illegal, all us showfolk were locked out from these second homes. We all went cold turkey, and the results weren't pretty. The consequences of this is still reverberating through our communities at the time of writing this in October of 2022. This cold turkey approach to quitting something might work for some, but only if it's something that you have wanted, and none of us wanted this. For this time, our second homes disappeared like nations, which for some political reason or another has ceased to exist, like Yugoslavia or the city of East Berlin. It's like your home was killed in an act of domicide. It's in the murder of a home. You want to go home, but that home is no more. We were like fish that had been pulled out of the water, gaping for air in a new existence, without the ability to get home. We were truly lost. And the pandemic took its toll not just because showfolk were out of a job, and not just because not doing shows left us lost and rudderless, but because we longed for a place we couldn't get to. Add to this that many of us further longed for places in the outer geography which had loved ones, but that we couldn't get to because we were sort of effectively locked out. We were locked out of it for years. A showman who's not doing shows is reduced to the stereotyped image people imagine as someone who lives hand to mouth, existing in a aimless drifting from village to village to show their tricks on the market squares. No longer a human who leaves his family and goes out alone, but with the express purpose to meet a group of beautiful strangers and invite them to this beautiful castle home that he has in the wild blue yonder, to share with them the poetic constructions of experiences and to show them the many rooms and all the art and artifacts contained therein. He travels out there not because he has nothing better to do or because it is some humdrum existence. He goes out there in the world to show them, the beautiful strangers, the most beautiful place there is. And there we have it. The end of a short and sweet episode about the Showman's 2 homes. And for those of you who remember back to the beginning of what I call the second season, when I talked about my own creative process and creating a show during the pandemic, I read a poem there by the Norwegian poet Jens Bjørneboe, which is called My Heart. My heart, my heart. It's an orphan child. And I did an act where I did some plate spinning, where the whole thing is about setting up to make to read this poem, but I keep being interrupted by the plates as they're spinning along. And in the end, there's 12 plates spinning, and I've used classical music by Rameau, and it's gone on repeat several times to increase the kind of feeling that this is taking longer and being more chaotic than it will. And then in the end, I stand in the middle, and I finally got the 12 plates playing in a recording where Igor, a very excellent hardcore band, industrial metal, but using technology anyway, they have, for whatever obscure reason, they used that same piano piece, and it's a great track. As that ends, 12 plates are spinning around me after I've talked about the pandemic and all that. That's why I'm thinking of that now, because that's all brought back up. And then I stand in the center of these plates, which is kind of like in a horseshoe around me, 12 plates, 4 on the left, 4 on the front, and 4 on the right. And I stand in the middle there as the music ends. Beautiful piece, piano piece, played by Vikingur Olafsson. It's a music by Johann Sebastian Bach, and that's playing. And then I read this poem about the most beautiful castle that he seeks. The child, his heart seeks this. His heart is like an orphan child, and it seeks this place. And then as I stand there and read it, it's a hot book, so the book catches fire. So I'm standing there reading the poem, and it's burning as I'm standing there, and all of the 12 plates fall down and smash all around me. But anyway, that's what the act is. But that poem, these words of calling it the most beautiful castle there is, and in the wild blue yonder, that imagery is from that poem. So I was thinking that a lot when I did that act, and strangely enough, it's now like almost exactly 2 years ago since that happened, and it's so weird. All the stuff that happened in the pandemic, including the writing of all this stuff, which is coming to an end now. Here, like within the last few episodes of this expanded second season, which has sort of worked out to be like 40 episodes instead of 20, which the last one was, so that's good. But yeah, it's all coming to an end, and all of that sort of found its seeds during the pandemic, and this image here of the 2 homes still haunts me a little bit. Don't want to be locked out again. Anyway, it's been a pleasure walking along for you on this nice short little trip. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, if you could tell your friends that this exists. If you have a friend who's a fellow performer, somebody who might need a nudge to add some more heart to their show, someone who needs some inspiration, perhaps this is the episode to send to them. It would make me very happy. Anyway, thanks a lot to all of you who listen. If you're new, I'm so glad that you're with us now. And if you've listened before and you've come back, I'm so glad you're back. And until next time, I'd just want to say take care of yourself and those you love, and I hope to see you along the way.